And the ANC in Ekurhuleni has finally managed to elect new leaders ahead of the much-anticipated provincial conference. Both Mzwandile Masina and TK Nciza retained their positions as regional chairperson and secretary, respectively. The conference had its own fair share of drama, with outstanding disputes delaying the registration process by almost 2 days. So what should we read into these patterns of ANC conferences and how they do progress? Political analyst Professor Dirk Kotze joins us for some analysis. Prof, it's great to have you with us on the program. I mean, aside from the chaos at the conference itself, flying chairs, insults and several delays, what do we read into these conferences going ahead despite several disputes that are still outstanding?
Well, they have more or less a deadline, and that is in July, because they have to convene these conferences so that there can be provincial conferences, which can then also elect ultimately the persons and do the nominations that's necessary for the national conference in December. Plus then the policy conference, which will be at the end of July. So there's a very tight agenda or schedule that they must meet in order to be able to attend both the policy conference as well as the national conference.
Are you saying it's understandable that these disputes are still outstanding?
No, I think what we are seeing is it's a long-standing problem within the ANC. It's not happening only now or this year. It's something which goes back to around about 2017, when just before the national conference. Then also we think about the so-called the flying of chairs conference in the Eastern Cape then, and other conferences. We've seen it also in KwaZulu-Natal now, in the eThekwini conference, where it was delayed for about 2 days. And it's all about the so-called credentials. It's about whether the delegates are indeed legitimate delegates that attend these conferences. There's the question of fake or branches that have not been audited. They are challenged, their status, and this is exactly what happened now in Ekurhuleni also. 5 branches' status are questioned or were questioned at this conference. So it is a question about to what extent is there a process within the ANC in which they can verify and ultimately accept the delegates beforehand, because what happens now is that in the beginning of each of these conferences, there's a debate about the so-called credentials. And it takes now most of the time, most of these conferences, almost a day. And it is about the fact that there's 2 sets of candidates, 2 so-called slates, which represent largely normally the two main groups within the conference of the 2 groups of candidates, or 2 factions, if you want to call it. And so it becomes a power contestation right at the start of the conference, before there's even any discussion or any election.
The issue, as you say, of credentials, Professor Kotze, is this connected to issues around the buying of votes, the buying of branches?
Yes, that is part of it. There's many practices. There's, for example, the idea of members, that some members of the ANC have other people that are aligned to them who are not actually legitimate or accepted ANC members, that they are, so the membership numbers are bloated. Gatekeeping is another aspect that's being used in order to prevent some people from joining branches, so that they can bolster the numbers of supporters from their side within the different groups, and all sorts of other practices. For example, the creation of branches that actually don't exist, because in terms of ANC,
all right, we apologize. We seem to be battling with our voice connection to Professor Dirk Kotze there. Prof, I'm not sure what's happening on your side, if perhaps there's a button that's been pushed, but we did lose our sound to you at the end of what you were saying. Prof, are you still there?
Yes, I'm here.
You were saying the difficulty insofar as the verifying of branches and their members. Please complete your thought, because I think it's actually quite an important one.
Well, it is, in terms of ANC policy, they must audit the branches. And the audit includes that they must have evidence that they had branch meetings, that the election procedure there were above board, that those delegates that were elected there are indeed done in terms of the ANC constitution's procedures in order to attend this regional conference, which will then lead to the provincial conference ultimately. Yeah. And in most instances, these audits are not done properly or not done in time, and that causes many of these challenges.
It's an interesting one because I suppose in as much as we can all see the importance of the ANC auditing branches, making sure that meetings were held, making sure that elections were done at branch level, knowing how many people are members of particular branches, it benefits some people to not have that audit done and to have these kinds of disputes taking place. Because surely if I'm up for election, it might benefit me that there are these bogus branches and these bogus members.
Yes, that is indeed so. And I think this is what now again happened at the Ekurhuleni conference. It was the same at the Eastern Cape Provincial Conference, the same at the eThekwini Regional Conference in Durban. So it is indeed so. And I think it's normally the persons on the other side who challenge this, to challenge the status of either the delegates or those of the branches. And we have seen it now again in the case of the eThekwini, of Ekurhuleni, of how it has played out exactly like that.
And I mean, it happens at national level as well. But let's talk about the Ekurhuleni conference more specifically now. I mean, David Makura slamming the way that the conference was held, slamming the behavior of members. Some people were walking around naked, he says. Others were bearing arms, seen in a war zone. Allegations of these branch exclusions, the other branch issues that we've talked about as well. What does this say about the provincial state of the ANC? Because, of course, we are building up to the provincial conference now as well.
Well, in the case of Gauteng specifically, there's early signs already that at the provincial level, there's similar problems. There were similar problems in Tshwane also in terms of the regional conference. So, and as well as in Johannesburg. So, the metro areas in Gauteng and therefore also the three of the regions are experiencing more or less the same problems. And it is an indication how contested the province has become. In the past, Gauteng was a more coherent province and not so divided in terms of the different groups. But for example, here in Tshwane, it's actually even more divided than Ekurhuleni, for example. So the Tshwane conference, which has not happened yet, I think it's going to be another test to see to what extent they could have learned from this conference from Ekurhuleni and did do better preparations in order to avoid this. But it's almost a guaranteed situation that they are going to challenge the credentials again at this conference also.
Mzwandile Masina, if indeed his win is confirmed, once those outstanding votes are counted, what does that mean provincially, for the two people who are standing for the provincial chairperson positions, and those are, Panyaza Lesufi, Lebogang Maile?
Well, he is to a large extent seen as a person very sympathetic towards President Zuma in the past, and his affiliations or his sentiments are very much still at that in that part of the ANC. So Ekurhuleni is certainly, and he has quite in the past had quite
apologies for that. Let me apologize to our viewers as well. We do seem to be battling with our audio connection to Professor Dirk Kotze there, giving us political analysis on the conference, the ANC's regional conference taking place in Ekurhuleni there. I'm going to leave it there for now. But yeah, those are the issues now. Mzwandile Masina, if indeed it is a win for him in Ekurhuleni, it is seen as an endorsement for Lebogang Mahile, who will be standing for the provincial chairperson position in Gauteng. Prof, thanks very much if you can still hear us, for your time.